Hi there. Okay, so before we start painting our scene in Unity, I just want to go through Unity's trees and show you how they work and why I made them like this rather than using the paintbrush Unity terrain trees, which in my opinion are really low quality, and I'll show you why. So first of all, how to set up a tree for Unity paint for the terrain. Here, and I've got one in there. I'm going to show you that in a second. So let's just go back into Max. So here's our tree. This is just a copy of our pine tree that we created earlier. I've got two materials on it, one for the leaves and one for the bark. Now, when you assign these, you must call the bark, call the material bark, and call the leaves, because Unity looks for those names to determine whether it is a paintable tree or not. So that's the first thing. Once you set that out, save it out and save it into Unity, which is what I've done here. This tree here is that tree in Max. In fact, that tree there is the same as that tree there, and you can see the difference just by looking at them. I can't make that any better than that. That's it. That's as good as it gets. You've got a few parameters that you can change, but you cannot give it a normal map. You cannot make it look bumpy, and if you want this rough bumpy texture like trees are, then you can't use these. And there's some pros and cons for using both, and I'll show you them now. So if I just delete that, right, so now I've got my tree set up in here. I've saved it out and I've got it in here. I've got my materials assigned to it, and the two materials, my bark and my leaves, are both using the leaves are using Natural Tree Soft Occlusion Shader there for leaves, and the bark is using Nature Tree Soft Occlusion Bark. Now you have to use those in order to use the painting tool in Unity. You've got a few settings here that you can use and slide up and down. The bark's even less than the actual branches and the leaves, but there's nowhere to put normal maps or anything like that, because you know, personally, I want this. This is what I want. This is the trees. I want my trees to look like this. I don't want them to look like Unity terrain trees, and I'll show you why in a second. So set up your tree with the two materials just like we've done before, but select the Natural Tree Soft Occlusion Leaves and Natural Tree Soft Occlusion Bark for both of your materials. Okay, and once you've done that, go over here, click on your terrain there, click on your tree, place trees here. So I'm just going to remove that tree so I can show you remove tree. Right, so click on your tree icon here in terrain, go edit tree, add tree, and you'll get this little window here. Then you're going to drag your tree that you've created for Unity and drag it into this slot here, and this bend factor determines how bendy is in the wind, so that you can play with. So click add, and there it is. You should see it appear here. Now if you click inside your window with that selected, you'll get a tree. If you click again, you get another tree. If you click lots, you get lots of trees. But look at them. Look what happens. One start, you're not getting this texture. That's the first thing. Secondly, I've got no control. Once they're on the ground, I can't touch them. That's it. They're placed. And I can't rotate them. I can't move them. I can't scale them. I can't do anything with them. They're stuck. And not only that, if I just place a few more down here that you see, oops, don't want that one there. They're all facing the same direction. I mean, look, you can just see, and it just looks ridiculous. I think this is, in my opinion, I've worked with a few game engines. These are the worst trees in the industry at the moment that a terrain editor can create. It's not good. It's really unhealthy, and I don't understand why Unity do this, because when you use the standard shader, you can create some nice looking trees, but the problem comes when you want to start adding wind. I don't know if it's going to work. So let me just check. Let me just see if this works. Okay, right. You see these moving in the wind? You can add that bend factor. You can tell Unity to blow these trees in the wind, and the wind will affect them just like that. Blim, blim, blim. And that's quite cool. But you can't do that to standard trees. Trees that you made yourself, that you want to look cool like this, won't blow in the wind. And there's no way of doing it unless you use a separate downloaded shader that you pay for from the asset store, or somebody in your team can write one. Because in my opinion, these are not an option. That is not an option for a tree in today's industry. It's just not. It's not an option. You can't use that. You would be chased out of the studio if you started making trees like this. You need, I question these, to be honest. They're just passable in today's, in today's market. They look pretty good, but it's quite difficult to get something decent out of Unity, especially foliage and terrain elements. So this is why I've made trees like this, and if you don't see my leaves blowing, it's because they're not using Unity's terrain editor. I've placed them by hand, and most trees in this course are going to be hand placed. They're not going to be placed like this. I mean, just look, you can just see the difference between the two. You can modify these trees and make them blow more in the wind. If I escape that, turn that off, and go to my tree, edit tree, edit. If I select it, go to edit tree. If I turn that up, it should blow more in the wind. I'll just have to get there again, and you can see now. See, now you can see they're blowing much more aggressively, although I don't think it's very good wind either. It needs to be, they need to do some work on this terrain editor. It's just not acceptable anymore. So the only thing I'd say these trees are good for is if you want to paint them around the edges of your scene where you'll never reach, where if you see them from a distance, way back up on your hill, if you see them way back here, they're just passable probably. But even then, you can see the normal map on my my model tree down there. This tree here, where my cursor is still got normals on it, and you can see it from here, but you can't see them on here. They just look smooth. It's not acceptable. So that's trees. You can use these if you want to. It's entirely up to you, depending on what your game is really. But if you're doing an adventure, I wouldn't use them. I would use your own trees and make them, and then go and get yourself a nice shader to move your leaves. Anyway, thought I'd show you that before we start painting our environment. So I will see you in the next lecture.